All right, well, good morning, everybody. It is 8:30 on January 8th. This is the City Council Economic Development Committee. We can let the record reflect that Josh Moe, Laura Burgess, and our newest member, Mazahar Salah, Mayor Pro Tem, is joining us in this three-person committee. Andrew Dunn has left City Council, and last night we selected Maz to join us, so welcome. Our first order of business is to consider the minutes of the October 16th Economic Development Committee meeting. A motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move. Second?
Okay. Any discussion? Maz, did you have any questions? We didn't really do much. We just got a very robust presentation and a great discussion from the audience, but
Yeah.
all right. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So the next item is review of the 2025 building permit statistics. And is that you, Jeff?
Yeah, I can do that. It would be 2024 building permit statistics.
I'm sorry.
I'm doing the same thing every day and getting those mixed up. But
Yeah.
the packet has a couple of different ways of looking at this. So we have the 2024 statistics by month. It's the same report that you see in your information packets every month, so you should be somewhat familiar with that. We also put in a 10-year snapshot, so you can kind of see how those numbers look relative to past years. And then there's a bar chart that you are probably accustomed to seeing in our budget presentations. You'll see a version of this on Monday as well. So I'll start with the first sheet, which is the 2024 building stats, and just kind of give you some thoughts on what I see in these numbers, and certainly answer any questions you have. As I talk about them, I'll put them in context of the 10-year averages as well. So as you look at the top, well, maybe we'll start at the bottom and then I'll jump to the top. The final number is the 130 million. That's the value of construction that's taking place in Iowa City. So when you apply for a building permit, you're putting down the value of that building, and that's how we calculate it. And we use building permits as a leading indicator towards property tax growth, right? The more valuation that you see coming through your building permits, you would expect to see your tax base start to grow 2 or 3 years down the road as those properties are constructed. So 130 million. It's a pretty low number for us. In context of the 10-year averages, we've been averaging about 194 million. And the 130 million that we finished at is, if you take out the COVID year, we in 2020, we were under 100 for obvious reasons. But you have to go all the way back to 2011 to find a number lower than where we came in at in 2024. So the obvious question is, okay, what's driving that? Where are we seeing a drop? And really, if you go back in time from 2023 all the way back to 2014 or so, 2013, there's usually a couple of very large projects that have pushed those numbers up, right? And we're lacking that. In 2024, we really didn't have a big project or two big projects that pushed that number up. So if you go to that 10-year average sheet and you look in 2023, at the very bottom, you'll see the 275 million where we finished. 41% of that was two projects, right? So you take out those two big projects and you're much closer to the 2024 numbers. 2022, you had 55 million in one project, Gilbane. Again, you take that out, you're under 100 million. 2021, you take 34 million out. You're with the Nest project, you're at 100 million. So that's what's missing in 2024. We didn't have the big student apartment building come in. We didn't have the big senior living project come in to really drive those numbers up. And where you see that is in the multiple family permits. So I'll get to that in a minute, but let's go back to the top of this report. So again, on the 2024, where the months that are across the top there, you will see we finished with 110 single-family permits. That's a pretty strong number for us. Our 10-year average is 114, so we're right at that average number. But that 10 years is really swayed by the early part of that last decade. So if you look at 2023, we only had 54 single-family permits. 2022, only 97. So getting back to 114 is a really positive thing for us. Despite the zoning changes that we made to enable more duplex properties in our zones, we really didn't see an uptick in duplex permits. But that takes time. Those zoning changes are only a year old, and residential land development planning takes years. So hopefully we will see those duplex numbers go up. The next category down is multiple unit dwellings at your apartment buildings. We didn't have any multifamily permits. And again, that's the difference between 2024 and all those previous years. We were averaging about 227 units, household units per year. That's not permits, that's not individual buildings, but that's how many units we would see in a given year. And we had 0 in 2024. Now, if you ask the average person on the street, the last few years, what's on your mind with development, they would say, haven't we built enough student apartments? Like, when is the market saturated? We've all had that question. So the answer may be in these 2024 numbers, we may be seeing market saturation with multiple family, particularly the student-oriented multiple family. And that's why we see 0 permits.
Jeff, can you remind us what the 2023 two big projects that you mentioned were?
Yeah, 2023 would be the Myrtle Riverside Student Housing Project that is still under construction, and the Featherstone Senior Living Project by Hickory Hill Park.
Thank you.
So for these large commercial projects, multi-units, the permit year and the actual occupancy year could be 2 years off?
Could be, yeah, could be 2 years off.
Single family is probably more like 1 year
Right.
or the same year
Correct.
lag. So.
Correct. Really, on the commercial side, I don't see any really stories in last year's numbers. We finished kind of the new commercial at 34 million, which is higher than our 10-year average of 24 million. So it seemed like a strong year, I guess, but not overwhelming. And everything else looked to be within the expected kind of range of what we would see. Keep in mind that there are some non-taxable projects. You see those in the schools and the public works categories. So if we are doing facility improvements, or if the school district is doing school improvements, they still get permits, but they do not obviously contribute to the tax base here. And then lastly, the university and any federal, so VA, post office, any work that they do does not go through our permitting system, and those values are not listed here, nor do they contribute to the tax base.
Regarding the commercial permits and the non-dwelling component of that, is that driven by a few large projects, or is it many projects that generate that?
Yeah, so it's
numbers there.
It's kind of hard to see, but we had 11 total permits for 12 buildings.
And is it like 10 makes most of that number and 1 makes the rest, or? Do you understand the question?
Is there like one large one and a couple?
Large project in there?
No, I don't think so. If you kind of look at the spread across the months, we'd have a 8 million, a 3, a 1.
Oh, okay.
So there is an $8 million. There was 2 permits for $8 million in March, and then the rest. There's a 15 million or 16 million in August. So no, I don't think there's one that's really driving that. I think that's pretty evenly spread. I will say what is very interesting and what I find encouraging is if you divide up the 2024 stats and look at the first 6 months of the year and the second 6 months of the year, there's a very different story there. So if you draw that magic line between May and June, and you go back and look at single-family permits, for example, between January and May of 2024, we only had 19 single-family permits. Thankfully, the second half of the year produced 91 permits. And from a total valuation standpoint, we only had 40 million roughly of valuation 6 months into the year, and the second 6 months produced about 90 million. So we definitely saw activity pick up in the second half of 2024. And, you had 3 rezonings at your council meeting last night, which is kind of a signal that there's some development readying on those 3 particular sites. So I would say I'm definitely more encouraged looking back at the last 6 months of the year and hoping to continue that trend into 2025.
I have some questions about the remodels, and I don't know how deep we can dive here, but we've talked about how I think you've identified, Jeff, that is maybe an area where you see opportunity in terms of, people reinvesting in existing properties for climate action, particularly, I think was maybe the context of when we had some of that discussion. Any remodel stories or things that you're looking for, hoping for?
It's a good question. I don't, most of particularly the residential remodels are going to be pretty straightforward. They're going to be redoing a kitchen or maybe, improving a back deck, finishing a basement. That's typical residential. The commercial I would have to dive into a little bit more. There's definitely a baseline of just tenant changeover, right? One restaurant's leaving, then another one's coming in, and they're going to redesign the space a little bit. Josh, maybe wearing your architect hat, you would know what that story is a little bit more. But I don't think that there's anything, any trends that I would pull out of those commercial remodel numbers. They do fall short of our 10-year average this year, but not
by a lot.
Not in a significant way. And those can be pretty erratic from year to year. So I don't have a good answer without kind of diving into that. But certainly you're right. A lot of our climate action grants are encouraging people to invest in those existing properties, whether that's insulation grants, solar grants, heating and cooling system grants, things like that. And if that can encourage reuse of a property and for properties to be more efficient, then that's great for us.
And just to keep following up on that, I think it's interesting for me to see the number of new commercial buildings in the last couple of years has been much, much higher. And I think about, again, from just a cost standpoint with the cost of financing, right? That was sort of surprising to me that we would see a lot more new, like 10 and 12, if I'm looking at 2023 and 2024 of new commercial buildings, whereas in past years, they were all low single digits. And then, just sort of like scoping that as a ratio with the remodels. Now, knowing a remodel and number of permits, a single project could pull multiple permits, if I'm thinking of that right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was just something that kind of struck me again from a labor cost, construction cost, land cost standpoint that people are building new buildings. And maybe that's more about the size of the project, that it was harder to get a $50+ million project built, so there were, more smaller ones. But
it could also reflect trends in the commercial market, and these are going to seem kind of minor, but over the last few years, how many self-storage places and car washes have you seen pop up, not just in Iowa City, but around the metro area? So sometimes there's some aggressive market responses to consumer demand that can drive those numbers up. I don't know that that's, when you're talking 11 or 12 buildings, and I might tell you 3 of those are self-storage and 3 of them are car washes, then the number's like, oh, okay, well, that seems more in line.
Okay.
Way to throw a wet blanket on her optimism.
Sorry, I just looking for patterns in the data. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to dive deeper in, and we can look at that for the commercial. You've got me curious now.
And as this relates to the property taxes and how it pays for city services, the commercial and industrial, are they both rolled back at 90% after the
90%.
first 150, whatever, thousand?
Yeah.
But residential's 46?
This coming year, so in the current year, your residential properties, including your single-family and multifamily, are taxed at 46% of their value, 46.4 or something like that. In the budget year you'll be discussing starting next week, it's up to 47%, so it went up about 1%. Commercial is at 90%, except for the first 150,000 is taxed at the lower rate. But for the most part, commercial's at 90%.
And no more backfill payments on that 10%? Where is that phased out?
We have that phased out. We have one more payment in fiscal year '26 of
Okay.
300,000, 308,000, and then it's gone in '27.
Okay.
So I am curious to sort of, in that category of the functioning of government, our industrial and commercial tax property owners, our tax-paying owners pay a lot of the taxes to support the city. How do we stack up against some of our peer cities for our sort of taxable valuation that's industrial versus residential? Are we?
I don't have the specific data, but I'd be pretty safe to tell you that we are very heavy on the residential side of things. We're 82% of our tax base is tied to residential. And again, that includes your multifamily. So you see these large Myrtle Riverside or Gilbane projects, those are multifamily, those are residential parcels. You look, if you were to compare other cities don't necessarily rely on public institutions to be their large employer. We have our largest employers with the university, the hospital, the school district, the city, the county. Those are all public institutions. So we're not drawing tax base off of our large employers like most cities across the United States do. So I would say we probably have a lower share in that commercial and industrial range.
I was just wondering about you said 82% of our tax base is residential, which includes multifamily. And that's of the total value, not the applying the rollback, correct?
82% of our tax base is subject to that residential rollback.
Right.
is what that
It's not
means, yes.
82% once you apply
Correct.
of receipts.
Correct.
It's not 82%. So and you indicated on this, on this chart, we can see almost $2 billion of the 10-year total, right? The 10-year total is I'm reading that right.
Yeah.
Almost $2 billion.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include, that is not, in that number is not any federal or University of Iowa.
That's correct.
Okay. Just if you have it off the top of your head, total valuation is always a number way higher than I imagined, but how many billions of dollars?
I don't have that off the top of my
Okay.
head. Sorry.
I know it'll be in our,
Yeah.
I know it's in the budget. I can
Yeah.
look it up, but okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Because asked me to change my password, and I don't remember even the password.
Yeah.
Because it's time for that password to be changed.
So looking forward here, I alluded to this earlier, but one of the things that we're going to be trying to watch closely with some of the zoning changes that council made, and certainly looking much farther ahead with the comp plan and the zoning changes to follow that, to see how that influences the mix of residential properties that we get. You can see that, we also track accessory dwelling units. A lot of those zeros in year past are just because we weren't collecting that information and separating it out. But we tried to make ADUs easier. We've tried to allow more duplex properties, more smaller multifamily properties. And hopefully, as that gets into the building community and they start thinking about neighborhood design, working within our form-based codes, we'll start to see a different mix of residential properties coming forward too. But again, those things will take years to play out.
Would it be hard to go back, pardon me, and sort of populate those?
Probably not. No,
Okay.
there's only, we had 3 in 2024. I
Right.
don't think in any given year, we're probably going to be much higher than that, if
Yeah.
at all. So we could do that.
That might be helpful just
Yeah.
for our longitudinal
Yeah.
view.
Agreed.
Is there anything that the Economic Development Committee ought to be doing with this data? It's very helpful, and, lots of thoughts. We know housing is a huge need in our community, but also tax base is a need. Is there anything that this committee should be doing with this information? It's just a,
I think just being generally aware. Every year, we're presenting to you land supply reports too, just right, how many platted lots are available, particularly for residential development, and we've shared with you that we're pretty low. Frankly, some of us were surprised that we got to 110 single-family permits this year because of our lots our available lots are so low. So that's something that we need to continue to keep in mind and make sure that we're focused on, as you guys have rezonings like you did last night. You just have to know that we're operating with scarce development opportunities throughout Iowa City. So if you want to see these numbers move forward, that's got to be reflected in how we are processing rezoning requests and platting requests. But I think it's good that you look at these. We do put these in the monthly reports. So if at future EDC meetings you want to do a quarterly check-in on permits, we're happy to do that. Your staff is already kind of looking at these on a monthly basis and flagging any trends that we see and having internal conversations. But I think for you all, just your awareness and understanding of how you the decisions that come before you and council ultimately influence these data.
any questions? All right. Well, item number 4 is staff updates.
Yeah, I have one update. I just wanted to give you a review of our targeted small business development grant program that we offered in the fall, and a lot of kudos to Rachel Kilberg-Varley for pulling this together. We had heard feedback in the past that some of our grant programs were focused on one-time investments in business, and while those are helpful, they may not have always set that business up to continue to grow. So we took a different approach on this one and really worked to get a lot of feedback before we crafted the program. And by we, I mean Rachel, to be clear on that. So the idea was to ensure that the businesses are paired with a coaching or consulting to firm, and that they specifically identified one challenge or barrier that they have in their business. And the idea was that by pairing them with a coach of some type, that they could get a second perspective on that barrier and how best to address it. And then the grant funds come and ultimately help address that. So not only giving resources for a one-time infusion of cash, but also an intentional relationship pairing to where they could hopefully take some outside opinion, not only for this particular challenge, but continue that relationship going forward. So we had phenomenal response. We had 89 applications. 16 were deemed ineligible, mostly because they were not located in Iowa City. And we had originally intended to just fund 5 of these. The quality was good and the response was so strong that we moved that up to 10. So we doubled what we thought we would do. Of the recipients, 40% were service-based, 10% were retail, and 50% were food-based. 40% of the recipients self-identified as Black, African-American-owned businesses, 40% self-identified as Hispanic or Latino-owned businesses, and 80% self-identified as women-owned businesses, which met our target goals there. What was very interesting is we did not assign coaches. We provided lists of resources and said we're open to others as well. We have 3 that are working with Greater Iowa City and the Business Resource Center, 2 that are working for the Iowa Center for Economic Success, 2 are working with, I hope I pronounce this right, Mailua Marketing, 1 MDC Iowa, 1 Action Coach Campus, and 1 Right House of Fashion. So we saw a great spread in terms of who these businesses decided to connect with and consult with on a regular basis. And we hope that, again, those relationships are not just one time for this grant, but that those businesses will continue to utilize those resources and help them grow into the future. So definitely something that we'll reconsider going forward. And I think it's a great transition into the Greater Iowa City Targeted Small Business Grant Program that they're working on right now. So Johnson County invested funds with, I believe it was ARPA funds with Greater Iowa City, and they're doing a similar targeted small business program. And I think there's some good momentum building for that inclusive economic development goals that we have set as a region. And we'll be anxious to see how those turn out, and then we'll retool and probably in 2026 think about what our next step is if we want to do another program similar to this.
The TSB coaches, which I'm glad to see that there's a variety of them, and you're not forced to just go to one person. That would seem kind of overbearing maybe, but what are the qualifications to be a coach, or how is that process vetted? Is it just an existing successful business, or?
I don't know that we set forth criteria. If there was if someone would propose somebody we weren't familiar with, we probably just would have done due diligence on an individual case. But we provided a kind of a menu of different service providers that we were aware of, that we had either funded or that we had sent people to in the past, and the vast majority of them chose one of those entities, so we were familiar with most, if not all, of those that were selected. But yeah, we didn't have, you didn't have to qualify. I think we would have just done our own due diligence if there was someone we were unfamiliar with. One of the individuals had an existing business coach, and we just allowed them to continue to utilize that business coach, for example.
And for the demographic you just mentioned, is this the people in general who applied or the people who fund it?
Of the awarded applications, that was the 40%, and 80% that I mentioned. I don't have the application demographics, but I think they probably mirror that.
Good.
You spoke a little bit to the question I had, Jeff, which was how this interfaces with the just announced county program that Greater IC is heading up. So it sounds like there is coordination. There will be some communication and follow through. Is that okay? I'm just looking at both of you like, this is happening, right?
It wasn't, I don't, we offered this program not knowing exactly how the Greater Iowa City program would all come together. Mm-hmm. And obviously, they have a larger pot of money. Mm-hmm. Their pot of money should be able to stretch a lot farther than our awards, which was totaled $50,000. So mm-hmm. I see ours as kind of, we got the ball rolling. Now there's a great opportunity with Greater Iowa City, not just for Iowa City businesses, but for Johnson County businesses. And we'll definitely be working together to evaluate, where the businesses that are receiving funds through our programs, kind of how they go through this process, the feedback they give us, the feedback that businesses are giving Greater Iowa City. And maybe the next time we look at this, we're doing it together. Mm-hmm. We're combining funds and resources. I don't know what that looks like, but we'll have lots of probably good feedback and data to analyze before we get to whatever that next step is.
I'm really, really grateful to see a program that if I understand correctly, in the application process, we asked businesses to identify hurdles. Like, so they had to do that when requesting the
Correct.
funds, and then to provide some continuity of support through a coach. Like, just as someone who works with a lot of small businesses, like, those two things are really, really significant. The one-time infusion of cash is usually just helps for a month or two,
Yep.
and then where are we? So that's
Yep.
that's encouraging.
Yep.
All right.
That's it for the staff updates, unless you have questions on projects or programs going on in the community, happy to answer.
And actually, can you remind us, what is the timeframe for the targeted small business applications and
January.
awards?
So our grant programs have been awarded. I don't know off the top of my head Greater
I
Iowa
think
Cities.
June 30th.
You want me
You know, January
Welcome
30th,
that.
the end of the
So-
month. I
Is it end of the
think.
month?
Hello, Mackenzie DeRue, Greater Iowa City. So our program, from the best of my knowledge, is also a partnership with the Community Foundation of Johnson County. And we have 3 rounds of funding. So the first round is currently open right now, and we're accepting applications, and we have been receiving a good number of applications.
Yes.
Round 2, I believe, will be in the spring or early summer, and then round 3 in the fall. So our goal would be that, we would have a committee that would select, but also we could provide some feedback to applicants who were not perhaps selected in round 1, so they could put forward a stronger application in subsequent funding rounds.
I have received some questions about that, and I couldn't even answer it, which is because it say the criteria you have to be affected by COVID. You mean if business was not existed during COVID, they are not eligible?
Not quite. So I am remiss to speak out of turn. I know all of that information is existing on the webpage, but another option, I believe, would be if you are perhaps a woman-owned business, even if you weren't impacted by COVID. So there's sort of 2 tracks. You can show impact by COVID, or you're a minority-owned business, is my understanding. There's certain criteria for that, but it should all be laid out on our webpage in a step-by-step. And if you have questions, you can call Greater Iowa City. If you have questions about the actual application form, that's being managed by the Community Foundation, and they're happy to walk people through that form. And then Maurice Davis from South of 6 will be sort of administering the program, and we have a series of clinics coming up. Childcare is provided at those clinics, so again, trying to lower any barriers. I also know there's been an intentional effort to make the materials about the program available in multiple languages. So if we can get any of that to you, to get out to your constituents, please let us know. We're
Sure.
happy
Yeah.
to
sound
circulate
good.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. Nothing else? New or old business? Welcome us.
Thank you.
So from a meeting cadence standpoint, in addition to any time we may need to pull you together for time-sensitive matters, we're looking at the first Wednesday of every calendar quarter, which would put us into our next meeting in April. And I think the idea is that staff would select some topic, like building permits today, to present more of an educational awareness type of topic, or maybe an outside speaker to come in. We talked about the Home Builders Association or something like that to provide feedback. But of course, if you all have something specific that you would like on an agenda, you have that ability to ask us to prepare that, and we're happy to do so. I think we have a list of ideas for April. I don't know exactly what those are, but Rachel's left us great instructions on what we need to be doing, and I welcome any feedback if there is anything for April that you would like on the agenda.
Is that list available to us, the list?
I'll send that out to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do
Great.
that.
Thank you. Hearing nothing else, a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.